Good afternoon, everyone. And standing on all existing protocols, I'd like to also add my congratulations to Business Day on this important milestone. I dare say that your voice would have been a valuable addition to this panel session, where we'll be discussing about what it takes to run successful businesses in Nigeria. But notwithstanding, I have with me remarkable business leaders and entrepreneurs who will be sharing practical insights from their journeys of building and growing businesses in Nigeria's dynamic environment. We will be discussing the mindsets, the strategies, and the discipline that's required to grow and scale businesses in Nigeria. Without further ado, I'll just start, and I'll be starting with you, Afyang. Real Fruit is a well-recognized and rapidly growing brand. What inspired you to start the business, and how did you identify the opportunity in Nigeria?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I would say that I had a non-traditional journey into entrepreneurship. Most people go into business because they identify a problem. And I was actually, inspired to start a business because I was bothered by job creation and the lack of jobs in Africa. So while living in South Africa, I started researching what industries create the most jobs. And at the time, our Minister of Agriculture, Prof. Akinwumi Adesina, was very focused on, making agri sexy, really communicating the need for young people to get into agriculture. And I kind of was influenced by him to look at that sector. And then further went into what sectors create the most jobs in agriculture, and it was fruit. And I also got interested in value-added manufacturing. There was also a lot of talk about how Nigeria imports all this food, and I thought, okay, I'll start a business where I can produce Nigerian fruit locally and sell it across the world. And that is the intersection of how I started with dried fruit. In South Africa, dried fruit is a very big product, but here I figured I'd be the first mover and I'll, build the market, which was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But, 13 years down the line, I can say that that path to entrepreneurship, although not really very strategic and not focused on, business per se, but more impact, has led me to a sector that is very impactful, but also has a lot of commercial opportunity. I don't want to brag too much about my business, but that staying power has really given us the chance to see the remarkable opportunity there is to produce and process fruit in Nigeria for customers. We're in 1,000 stores across Nigeria. We are also now big into inputs, import substitution. We produce products for industry, and we're also very fortunate to be exporting our products across the world. So what started as impact has now, led us to a land of opportunity, and we're really excited about what we've built and what's to come.
Awesome. It's always great to hear about how an idea is brought to reality. And staying with that theme of identifying opportunities where they don't seem to exist. Kofo, I've heard you describe setting up Secure ID as plunging into uncharted waters. So my question, I guess, for the budding entrepreneurs or somebody who's looking to sort of chart new grounds is, how did you, decide to take up that opportunity, and how did you deal with the uncertainties that would have come, with trying something new?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dolapo, and good morning, or I think it's still morning, everyone, and congratulations to Frank Aigogun of BusinessDay for setting this up. In terms of I think the story of secure ID started 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, yes, it was uncharted waters. I'm in the payment space and also tech manufacturing. And we manufacture smart cards for the banking sector, for the telecom sector, which is SIM cards. And for government sector, we're talking about high security government documents, i.e. driver's license, voter's card, passports, and national IDs, and the list goes on. But 20 years ago, what inspired was that I saw a clear gap in the banking sector in terms of how payments were made. Payments were largely dominated by cash, and also there were just a few cards in circulation, but those few cards were based on old technology, which is the magnetic stripe technology. Also, a lot of those cards were imported, so which means that when you walk to a bank to ask for a payment card, it could take you about 3 to 6 months. And at that time as well, the level of fraud was extremely high because magnetic stripe technology was very easy to hack in. So at the time that we saw, and I saw that clear gap, I felt like that gap needed to be closed. And I looked around me and there was no one to benchmark, so that's why I call it uncharted waters. And in terms of closing that gap, you know, we needed to add value to the gap that we had seen. And that gave rise to the what. What do we want to do? And what we wanted to do was to set up a world-class manufacturing plant, manufacturing these products in Nigeria for Africa and by Nigerians. And the other question was, why do we want to do that? You know, why do we need to close the gap? Those values would add benefit to each of the sectors we were talking about. And I guess what gave one the confidence was looking at the how. You know, how do we fulfill this? You know, obviously there were obstacles, there were challenges, and so on. But the how was then looking at capital, looking at alignment, and then how do we execute and how do you plan? You know, and once I realized that if we plan, because as far as I'm concerned, a good plan is as good as the assumptions that you make. With what I could control was the self-motivation, was the resilience, was the grit. But of course, you can't control the social economic environment at that time. And so what gave rise to the confidence was that the values far outweighed the risk, and the risks were clearly analyzed, and that is how we charted into this phase.
Thank you for highlighting again the importance of courage and grit with respect to taking advantage of opportunities. Dalu, the next question is for you. For banks, the stakes are even bigger. Your decisions, they impact businesses, industries, and the economy in general. My question for you is in two parts. The first one is Standard Chartered has been sort of realigning its focus in Africa. The institutions existed a few markets across Africa. What's the rationale for your continued presence in Nigeria? In the first hand. And the second hand is being a multinational, part of multinational business. How do you balance, you know, the realities of Nigeria and doing business in Nigeria, which we've heard a lot about today, and global priorities?
Okay, so thank you again, and thank you BusinessDay for this fantastic opportunity and conference. I think the first thing is to recognize that as Standard Chartered, we've been operating in Africa broadly for over 150 years. We have deep roots in the markets that we do serve. In Nigeria, we've been operating for over 25 years. So we really are deeply invested. We understand our markets. And as such, when reflecting on the decision to exit, I think the first thing I would like to say is that it's not necessarily an exit of key markets. It's more a refocusing of our strategy in the markets that we do serve due to the length of time that we've been in there, but more importantly, reflecting on what we bring to the market and ensuring that we bring focus to the value that we deliver to our clients. And the word value has been played up, several times, both in the oil and gas panel. Kofo just talked around value. And value is what underpins, our business, call it rationale. And when we think about, the areas of strength, what differentiates us in the market, we realize that we have a very strong corporate and investment bank where we leverage the network effect of our 56 markets to be able to deliver solutions to our corporate and investment banking clients. And in the retail segment, we're very strong in wealth and affluent, but not very strong in mass retail. So you would see that the markets that we did exit is not necessarily we exited totally the markets, but we exited, call it the mass retail segment in certain markets where we were subscale, we were not market leading, and we didn't have, call it the value orientation required to be market leading. So again, it's around focusing on key markets where we can be market leading and we can leverage the network of a global, call it franchise, to deliver solutions consistently to our clients. Now in Nigeria, the question always alludes to, we are here for good. We didn't exit any of our operations in Nigeria, and the question is why? Back to the comment around focus and really understanding our value proposition. In Nigeria, over 80% of our business is primarily corporate and investment banking. And on the wealth and retail banking, should I say proposition, most of that is skewed towards wealth and affluent. So you would see that across our global strategy, Nigeria fits squarely in terms of how we go to market and how we leverage our competitive advantage. So Nigeria is one of those markets where, it has, a lot of depth in terms of the requirements of our clients to tap into a global network bank like ours to be able to deliver solutions consistently. Now, when you think about, delivering solutions, it ties back to, linking to, call it our global strategic objectives and how it actually fits into the Nigeria narrative. The Honorable Minister, represented by Sanyade, talked around infrastructure. We are big players in terms of, call it the infrastructure journey that's emerging in the Nigeria market today. We partner with governments deeply in being able to think about, creative financing solutions for infrastructure projects. You would see, yet to be announced, but a lot of work going on the rail networks, and I wouldn't want to take the thunder. We're working with government on some of those initiatives. We're working with government on power initiatives, road initiatives, etc. And a lot of those are on the back of the renewed hope agenda around infrastructure. But even prior to that, we're also very active in other key sectors. Oil and gas, we are probably one of the most active international players in oil and gas currently. Out of all the 6 divestments that happened in the last, call it 18 to 36 months, we advised on 5 of those. So a lot of the independents here on the back of our advisory mandates, but also we're deeply connected with NNPC and work deeply with NNPC on a range of projects, from advisory all the way to financing, etc. But I can go on and on and on around the types of deals that we do. The key takeaway is that we see ourselves as important partners and trusted partners to the sovereign. We see ourselves important partners to various MDAs, from Ministry of Finance, the Central Bank, to the DMO. But we also see ourselves as important partners to our corporate community, where we work on everything from trade to financing to other structured solutions that address some of the most thorny issues that they face. I think the last example I'll give around thorny issues is that if you remember, in the time of over the last, call it 3 to 5 years, I wouldn't call it crisis, but in time of volatility, there was a lot of, call it indecision and trapped cash in the country that made it very difficult for corporates to appropriately invest and react. We worked with a lot of corporates around some of those issues using very creative derivative structures to, one, extract cash, but also reinvest cash in a very, very sustainable way, even in the most difficult times in the market. And a lot of that is in the underbelly. You don't hear about that in the public. But it just tells you that we're able to leverage our global network, global expertise, in a very focused and target ways, working deeply with our clients in a trusting way to deliver solutions that unlock activities that actually benefit the country.
Thank you. I think maybe bucking the sitting arrangement. My next question is for Tayo. Maybe you could describe NESG's approach to strengthening the business environment and how that has changed, with the economic cycles as well.
When we discuss NESG's approach, a very good example is BusinessDay's approach, because in 30 years of NESG, BusinessDay has been there for those entire 20 years, covering and making accountable the players in the Nigerian economy that shape policy, that shape change. And once again, I want us to give Oga Frank and BusinessDay a big round of applause for steadying the cause and building a really powerful, value-based, principle-based institution, because that's where you start. You start with a clear vision. And in 1993, business leaders got together and agreed that a productive, powerful, peaceful, digitally connected industrial Nigeria was possible. That was possible for Nigeria to be competitive. That was possible for Nigeria's economy to be inclusive, and we could do that in a sustainable way. Now, why that is important was these business leaders were visualizing the future at a time where we were run by a dictatorship. Military rule was here, it was perverse, it was entrenched, and these business mutineers started this conversation. And so vision is important, because vision is where you get the audacity of hope to act. And the audacity of hope is key to action. So I think that's the first thing. The NESG has sustained the vision of Nigeria where we were daring to push the boundaries of conversations that looked impossible. In 1996, the target for teledensity by 2010 was 1%. Can you imagine? 1%. 1% teledensity was our own vision for ourselves by 2010. The Economic Summit pushed against that type of target to say, no, the world is moving faster, technology is moving faster. By 1999, we had forced the review of the National Telecommunication Policy. That birthed the GSM roadmap. 10 years later, teledensity in 2010 was already above 65%. So that's how you do it. You do it with a clear vision and then with some audacity of hope backed by some action. Another great example is pension reforms. In 2001, we were at a summit where we had presented a new vision of pension reform. The president at that time, President Obasanjo, said, "You mean we'll hand over all the pensions of Nigeria to you, the private sector?" And he said, "Ole," as he's idiosyncratically, his boisterous personality would do. 2 years later, he called us into the room and said, "Right, government has failed at pension reforms, now is your turn." We took that and ran with it, and today private sector led pension industry cannot be, you cannot even imagine that we thought that was an impossible task. So how do you do it? You do it first with a clear vision, some audacity of hope, and some agreement on some co-production principles, because economic transformation cannot be delivered by the private sector alone. So what we have done is to agree with our government partners on the co-production principles. Number one is a commitment to a competitive economy. And this is important because Nigerian firms will not be globally competitive if home base does not give them an advantage. Number two is private sector-led investment. Let's cut the chase. No amount of government budgeting will match the size of our dreams. So expanding our capacity to put the private sector and its investment to work is the only theory of change. Number three is create an enabling environment to do business. And guess what? We in business are the best people to tell you what an enabling environment looks like. So regulatory capacity to listen to the private sector and to turn that around makes a difference. Number four is the rule of law. Number five is democratic governance. And number six is an approach to governing that creates sustainable development. Now, these principles were agreed 31 years ago. And all we have done at MESG for 31 years is to use these principles and the evidence to drive crucial public-private conversations that create consensus around big actions and to get those actions out of the room. And look, government listens when the private sector speaks with one voice, and that's something we need to do more of. Going into the future, the theme of this panel is building a new Nigeria. Two consensus items are required. One is a consensus on our economic transformation. That not only must Nigeria grow, Nigeria must grow in a particular way, with depth, with diversification, with a strong orientation on exports, with a commitment to productivity, with a deep agenda and aggression for technology upgrades, and with a people-centered approach where we carry more people along and leave fewer people behind. That would be, in my opinion, NESG's approach going into the future. It needs scale, it needs grit, it needs all hands on deck. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hear consensus, and I think we've heard that quite a bit today on the need for consensus on what the new Nigeria and the direction for that looks like. But before we go into just sort of a segment for scale and growth, one thing that's very important for entrepreneurs is how businesses like the businesses represented here today have dealt with, the uncertainty and the volatility that has characterized the economy over the last few years. So I'll come back to you, Afyong. The business environment has faced significant pressures, and businesses like yours would have felt the impact of currency instability, rising inflation, dwindling consumer income. And, businesses will approach these issues in different ways. Some will decide to push ahead with strong growth. Others would be to hold back. How did you approach the volatility, and, how does that look in action?
Okay, so yes, I cannot underscore the importance of macroeconomic stability in our sector, especially in the manufacturing sector. Over the last 13 years, I have endured several devaluations. Everybody in the room knows how the country has gone from boom to bust cycles and what that means for businesses. And I've been no exception. So there's been a lot of resiliency, there's been a lot of surviving and holding on, but we've taken some of those lessons into how we've basically set ourselves up for the future. One of the things that helped my business in particular was our demographic, our target market. We focused, when I first, actually, funny enough, when I first moved to Nigeria, somebody said you can't build a scalable food business if you're not selling 100 naira product. And that always used to haunt me because my products could never be sold at 100 naira. But over the years, that actually was one of our advantages, that because we were selling to the most resilient, I would say, target market, we were able to recover from the different volatile situations we found ourselves in. And learning from that, as we expanded our manufacturing capacity, we were very intentional about diversifying on the manufacturing floor, meaning that we would be producing for different market segments. So now we have a retail product that people know of, but we also have products that we sell to industry, and we also have products that we export. And that seems to be the hedge that we think will keep us, afloat and also keep us thriving in the future. But I think the most important thing is for us as a business is for Nigeria to be stable economically, because wherever now we invest, if these calculations change, it's very difficult for us to recover as we scale. So we're hopeful that we're set for a period of macroeconomic stability that will really encourage our scale and our growth. But those are some of the ways that we've been able to manage volatility in the business.
Thank you. Kofo, your business has been around for at least 2 decades, and that has seen periods of boom, periods of, contraction. What are some of the important factors that today's entrepreneurs should also, keep in mind as you go through those economic cycles to ensure that you're building a resilient and sustainable business, regardless of the cycle that you find yourself?
You're talking about growth or?
Growth, downward trend, how did you manage that?
Okay, one is, like I said, when we started, we were basically substituting imports at the time, and started small, and then stage by stage started growing. And that's why I always say growth comes in phases, and growth is not static. It just continues. And in terms of sustaining that resilience and sustaining is, first of all, knowing what your core values are, what is that winning culture, and ensuring that there is alignment with the people you have to hold that culture that is so dear to us and has kept us. If I look at sustaining and the resilience and going through all the different economic cycles, because we have been through ups and downs, one is you need to know the market trend. You need to know when to change, when the market changes. I remember when we started, we focused on the Nigerian market, but we ensured that we went for global certifications that will help us to do business across borders. And today we export a lot of our products to over 20 countries across Africa. Now, the other thing we do, so that is growth, but what next? What next was we looked at it and said, Africa is one market. As opposed to just having clients in different countries across Africa, why don't we actually establish our footprints in some of the strategic regions? And then we went and built a factory in another part of Africa to take care of that region. So it's resilience, it's ensuring that the DNA and the culture that has kept you going is well entrenched and well sustained all through. It's ensuring that, for me as a leader, it starts with me. Improving myself, improving my skills, because the skills you need for a startup is different from the skills that you need when the company is well established. So you have to keep growing. And then for the people for tomorrow that will take that company and help the company grow as the market changes, you need to identify the potentials within your organization and develop them to grow. So there are several areas and several factors that we need to touch to ensure that the resilience continues. The other thing is diversification. I remember there was a major year where 50% of our revenue was at stake because of a policy shift, And what helped us was that we were already well diversified, And so it was not easy, but we thank God that we had other verticals that we could rely on at the time that we needed to. So we need to be well certified and diversified. Innovation, as I said, is not static. So you need to know your market. You need to ensure that you are ahead of the market and you have what it takes before the market even gets there. You know, a lot of the certifications that we have and a lot of the things that we can do, the market has not demanded for it yet. But we know that at some point, they're going to get to it. So you need to keep improving. You need to keep studying and mastering the trend of the market that you're in so that it's very easy to adjust when the market changes.
Thank you. So I heard understanding the trends to identify the opportunities, proofing your business, diversification, just getting ready even in the high periods for when inevitably the low periods could come. Thank you for that. Kashifu, thank you very much for the presentation earlier today on how NITDA is working to develop Nigeria's digital economy. How could the private sector better leverage what you have on offer? What could entrepreneurs do to better leverage what you have available? The frameworks, the goals, and the targets that you have for the country.
So, okay, thank you very much once again for having me. So our approach to regulation at NITDA, we started from when the private sector and government were not engaging at all. We're just doing blame game. Then we said we need to look at that our engagement contract. How can we review the social contract we have between government and private sector so that we can sit together with the private sector to co-design and co-create policies. Government develop policies for the private sector, not for the government. And when you are designing and building that policies without people that will implement it, being part of it, there won't be any ownership when it comes to implementation. So today we have a president who is pro-business, the president who wants to create the right environment for businesses to thrive in Nigeria. Looking at that, the president wants us to work together with the private sector to co-design and co-create. And our mandate, we call our regulation developmental regulation. Our regulation is not to stifle innovation, but we use it as an instrument that can help us create new market, democratize services, enhance service delivery, as well as to protect consumers. And even the providers need to be protected to a certain level. So those regulations are putting the guardrails in place to ensure we have the best practices that can serve everyone. And when we look at it from the market creation perspective, it is not about just bringing a regulation. When you bring that regulation, we want to create something new because we are talking about new Nigeria. The new Nigeria we are envisioning is not going to be the same thing with the Nigeria of today or the Nigeria of yesterday because we have different indices and parameters that shape the future. So it's for us now to decide what kind of Nigeria do we want to create, what kind of policies do we need to have in place, and what can inspire us to create that Nigeria we are envisioning. So looking at that, the future is digital. Today, our lifestyles is digital. Every organization is a technology organization. Every industry is a digital industry. So how can we use this technology as a source of inspiration? For example, AI, or if you look at most of these emerging technologies, they are general purpose technologies, something you can use everywhere. How can I invite AI to the table as a CEO or as a business so that I can use AI as a thought partner to come up with something new business value proposition? Then how can I be the person in the middle? Because yes, AI is there, AI can do more than what we do, but AI is not going to replace you and I. AI will replace the skills we have today and the processes we follow to do our work. Then the third one is being in the middle is the second one. Then the third one is to make sure the AI you are using, you give it a persona around. Because if you want to get the best, for example, from the Gen AI, give it a persona. Tell it you want it to act as a doctor, as a lawyer, as a business partner, as a co-founder to build that solution together. But the last one is you need to look at it as the worst AI you will ever use. That's how government comes into place. We need to create a policy lab. We need to test it. We need to make sure we are getting the best out of it. So that's the approach we take to regulation as a government, to help the private sector use or build use cases using this technology, then come up with a benchmark which we will use as a baseline for frameworks, guidelines, and regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to growth and scale and the approach. Afyong, you talked about diversifying your business outside Nigeria, and Kofo also alluded to that as a means of, diversifying risk, expanding your market share. What would you say are the important factors for successfully entering new markets?
Yes, I think understanding the market is absolutely critical. When you're obviously playing in a global market, you're playing against global competitors. So knowing the trends and the drivers of that market, for us, it's also picking markets that we're going to take long-term bets on, which are countries that have a lot of growth potential, and one where there's a depth of the market so that we can target several types of customers, and that's worked well for us. The last thing is actually the cost of entry. I mean, I won't go too much into regulation and certifications. That's very dependent on the sector. But for us, understanding the cost of entry has been critical. When we started trying to serve the US market, we realized very quickly that after a while, it was difficult the way we were going to continue to, as a Naira earning business, serve a dollar country the way we were, and we had to kind of recalibrate and look for more cost-effective ways. So understanding the investment required to get into these markets and to be able to break into the market before you start recouping your investment is absolutely important. What I come across more is that you lose staying power because you run out of funding, and you realize that you can't do what it takes to be able to properly play in the market. So those for me are the core.
Just staying with the point about funding, the next question is for you, Dalu. What are entrepreneurs currently leaving on the table? How could they better optimize their relationships with their financing partners? How could they do more with the banks to better access the funding that's required to grow and scale businesses?
It's always good. Look, I think the first thing is around transparent engagement. Like we all know, I think every financier has its own, call it, parameters that it looks at to be able to assess a underlying credit before you actually, provide capital. And I think there needs to be a lot more transparent engagement between, users of capital and providers of capital, particularly around, what are the parameters that are most important for the providers of capital, and how does that fit the requirements of the user of capital. I'll say that is the core. But I'll take it a step further because, we look at ourselves not only as a provider of capital, but as an intermediary of capital. And the more we understand, the users of capital, call it the requirements, the gestation period of their business, how mature or unmature the businesses are, and we have that sort of an open dialogue with them, then we can actually tap into multiple different sources of capital. And I think, typically people look at a bank as, the bank's balance sheet, but it's not necessarily the bank's balance sheet. I mean, we intermediate capital flows from multiple different sources, from capital markets providers to, foundations and donor agencies to export credit agencies to private capital to equity providers, etc. And the deeper our engagement and trust with the users of capital, the more we can actually package their storyline and their requirements to fit various funding sources. So I think the biggest advice I give is to start early, engage deeply, and understand the various sources of capital and their criteria, and be able to package a story that actually meets those requirements. And that would be the advice I give to entities that are looking for capital.
Dialogue and transparency. Kafur, in addition to funding, you have scaled your business over the last 20 years. In addition to funding, what are the other critical factors that businesses or entrepreneurs, founders need to take into consideration or that are important to scaling a business successfully in this market?
As I said, funding is good, but it's not everything. One of the things that they need to, the major thing is to know your market, know your business, know the trends, and continuous improvement, always be ready to change when it does. Have a disruptive mindset, disrupt yourself when you need to, so just always look at, how can you add more value to the market that you're serving. And the only way you can know that is by really mastering and studying the trends, not only in your market, but even in markets that are more developed. So the global trends. Oh, this is happening globally. Nigeria may catch up with it as well. How do I prepare for it? And so on. So I would say that in addition to funding, knowing the market is important. Secondly is people alignment. As a CEO and a leader, you can see your North Star, but how do you get other people to see what you're seeing and buy into it? So continuous people alignment, developing the potentials that you have and the talents that you have. Good succession planning at every stage is also important. The next is be globally competitive. I remember when we wanted to start, we were very much aware of made in Nigeria will be seen as low, sort of low quality. So quality was very key to us. And what was also key, and in order to have that high quality and best-in-class standards, we had to benchmark ourselves globally. So it wasn't about what our immediate market was demanding for, but what are the global standards in the business that you're in? So benchmark yourself globally, be globally competitive in terms of the products that you're selling, in terms of your business ethics, and so on. So these are all the factors that also come into play apart from funding. The other thing is choosing your shareholders, choosing your investors, ensuring that the values are uniform across board. You know, that's also extremely important. But being ready to disrupt yourself when you need to. Thank you.
Thank you. Tayo, I think this will be the final question, maybe just for any final remarks by any of the panelists. But Tayo, from your experience, what would you say are some of the common attributes that, you know, you see in successful businesses and that would help, you know, current entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs, anyone who's thinking about setting up a business, to know what's really important? What are some of the common themes or threads that cut across the successful businesses that you've worked with, you've partnered with in the course of NESG?
So I think it's important to begin with a clear sense of what bets you're taking and what the costs of those bets are. Sometimes business leaders are underestimating the effort level required to build, grit, and scale something in Nigeria. And when you do that, you can lose before you start. So this is hard work. But that hard work then requires this commitment to resilience that has come through every panelist. The second is a commitment to strategic agility, because in disruptive, and Nigeria has been very disruptive, one of the consistent longer-term trends on Nigeria's macro is that we are still a highly unstable economy. If you take a 30-year look at our GDP, it's all over the place, all right? And when you're operating in that kind of market, strategic agility is everything. Your resilience, your capacity to reflect on the data and see corners before they happen, your ability to be resourceful, and you've heard from the panelists, this capacity to dig in, look at what to leverage and pivot to. And then, of course, you need this huge capacity to connect with what comes next. Now, once you have resilience, you have that commitment to strategic agility, the next thing is you need to become catalytic. And one of the things we encourage business leaders at the NESG to do is to get involved. One of the best ways to determine the future is to shape the future. Don't wait for it to happen and then complain it happened to you. Get involved in the policy conversations. Get involved in the policy debate. Some of the best feedback regulators can get is from innovators at the core, shaping the market and the products of the future, right? And so when you are doing cutting-edge stuff, don't hope the regulator will get it. No, make it part of your business to sit across from government, and NESG creates a lot of space for that, so that you're catalytic in shaping the future. If you want a future, if you want to build this new Nigeria, we must become proactive, deliberate as business leaders to get in front of the conversation. So let's not wait for an AI policy from DG. You know, we need to say, DG, here's how we see AI working today and working the next 10, 20 years. Here's where we see policy needs to go. Now, the last thing is back to a mindset on competitiveness, and all the panelists have said it. Anywhere in the world, we have seen small, medium-scale firms scale to large firms and compete around the world. They have this mindset that they are playing global. They don't have a mindset where they are saying, we're just going to win in Lagos and win in the local market. You know, that local quality or a Nigerian quality must be substandard, and the Nigerian quality must be lower than the global standard. We must break that mindset that allows us for Nigerian quality to mean, in the same word, global competitive quality. That then gives us the mindset to push the boundaries. And competitive pressure is good. I think that's something else all the panelists have said. The competitive pressure, that desire to go, you know, to build something that wins everywhere, not just here, gives the business the pressure to build its capacity in its leadership, in its processes, its systems, to ensure that value innovation stays way ahead of the curve. And that allows us to pursue a trajectory where not only is the future possible, but we exceed our dreams. So I think that those are the things that we see in business leading. In the last 30 years, the businesses that were here when NESG started and are here now doing great things, these are characteristics they all have in common. And the last is, let's not kid ourselves. This takes audacity, bold, audacious hope that you can make a difference and you can build something to last. I think the leaders have thrived, have done all that, and many of them are in the room, and congratulations to all of you.
Thank you very much. And I think we've run out of time, but any final remarks for, the...
I think for me, a big takeaway in terms of just business is that you got to embrace two things, collaboration and partnership. And I'll say collaboration both locally and globally, and partnership locally and globally. I think we're living in a world where the market is big. There's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of capital, there's a lot of willingness to partner, but if you're not open to engage deeply across multiple different, should I say, spheres of relationships, you will never know what is available to you to be able to help you scale your business. And I think that's most important, particularly when I think about the businesses that have been successful, whether it's in Nigeria or globally. The concept of partnership, the concept of collaboration continues to come to the fore. When navigating difficult times, the answer is never around you. It might be far away from you. But if you don't engage deeply, if you don't partner, if you don't collaborate, then you miss the mark. And I think, as a bank, as Standard Chartered Bank, we continue to say we are a network bank. And we're able to we're able to leverage the network of 56 countries globally to bring to one market. And we've seen it actually come to play on multiple different, should I say, situations, which are either transaction-oriented or even business, call it BAU-oriented. That's business as usual. And it always amazes me that when you're able to tap into, call it a wider audience, the multiplicity of solutions is far, far, far more superior than what one would have expected just being in a conclave of a room. So I'll just continue to encourage people, keep an open mind, collaborate deeply, collaborate widely, and partner widely.
Thank you. And Kofu?
Yeah, I was just going to sort of conclude on the new Nigeria that we want. Honestly, this new Nigeria, the private sector is very pivotal to it, and I'm talking to entrepreneurs, I'm talking to CEOs, I'm talking to executive directors, I'm talking to visionaries here. Yes, we have the socio-economic environment, but for this new Nigeria that we want to see, it must be globally focused and export focused as well, with global strategies. Nigeria cannot continue to depend on oil alone. We have to be more productive. Innovation must kick in. And we must make sure that not just our products are competitive, but our businesses are also competitive. And it just doesn't affect the product, but it also increases the value of our currency. And if the value of our currency increases, then it's better lives and better living standards for all. And that's the new Nigeria that we want to see.
Thank you very much. I'd like to bring the session to a close by thanking the panelists for what I hope has been an inspiring and engaging discussion. I do hope that the insights shared here will generate fresh thinking, new ideas, and also help instill fresh confidence in the Nigerian enterprise. Thank you very much.